Some of you have been negotiating, making deals, easing boundaries, softening conviction in the name of grace or growth. But I need to say this clearly. Darkness doesn't bargain. It waits. It watches. And the moment you lower your sword, it moves in. Welcome back, soldier. Today's lesson is critical because if you get this one wrong, you lose the war within. No compromise. Ephesians 5:11 have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Not tolerate, not study, not coexist with. Expose, resist, flee. You don't defeat darkness by inviting it into a conversation. You defeat it by standing in the light without apology. 2 Corinthians 6:14. What fellowship can light have with darkness? The answer? None. This isn't about being judgmental. It's about being clear. Boot camp doesn't train you to be polite to your enemy. It trains you to know who your enemy is, where we negotiate without realizing it. Let's get honest. We're not always fighting demons. Sometimes we're inviting them in with silence. Here's what modern negotiation with darkness looks like. It's just a show. I know it's toxic, but I'm used to it. It's not that serious. I can handle it. I'm strong enough. But here's the truth. Every compromise trains your soul to tolerate corruption, and tolerance becomes training in reverse. Biblical examples: who refused and who folded. Let's talk history. Who refused to negotiate? Joseph resisted Potiphar's wife, even when it cost him prison. Genesis 39. Daniel refused to eat the king's food, trained in dietary holiness. Daniel 1. Jesus said no to Satan's offers in the wilderness all 3 times. Matthew 4. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego refused to bow, faced the fire. Daniel 3. They didn't win by being clever. They won by being clear. Who negotiated and fell? Eve listened just long enough to be convinced. Genesis 3. Samson played with temptation until it shaved his strength. Judges 16. Judas traded loyalty for silver. Luke 22. Saul chose people's approval over God's command. 1 Samuel 15. They didn't fall from one big sin. They fell from a series of small compromises. Why we must be ruthless with shadows. Romans 13:12. The night is far gone, the day is at hand. So then let us cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Light doesn't flirt. It casts off the dark. You must be ruthless with your shadows. If it tempts you, cut it off. If it lies to you, speak truth out loud. If it numbs you, replace it with something that sharpens. There is no neutral ground. How do you recognize darkness in disguise? Ask, does this make me more alert or more numb? Does this draw me towards truth or away from it? Is this forming the light in me or feeding the shadows? Discernment isn't paranoia, it's spiritual precision. Jesus on negotiation. Matthew 6:24. No one can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve both God and money. Revelation 3:16. Because you are lukewarm, I will spit you out of my mouth. Lukewarm is untrained. Lukewarm is unarmed. Lukewarm is soft negotiation with darkness. But Jesus was not vague. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Boot camp doesn't graduate double-minded soldiers. Field briefing. You're lying in the sand. In this field briefing, it's time to take a hard look at where we might be compromising and identify the next steps for growth. First, consider your thought life. Are you allowing lies to shape your mind? If so, the next move is clear. Replace those lies with the truth of Scripture. When it comes to relationships, ask yourself if boundaries need to be set or if there are idols that need to be released. In terms of habits, if you're engaging in actions that keep you trapped in the shadows, it's time to cut them off. For entertainment, if you're numbing your mind with distraction, a fast might be necessary to regain focus and clarity. Finally, assess your words. Are they filled with truth, or are you relying on sarcasm? If it's the latter, the goal is to train in truth and speak with purpose. This is your line in the sand, where decisive action can lead to real transformation. Draw your line, hold it, and don't look back. There is no version of formation where you make peace with poison. Darkness isn't playful, it's patient. But so is light. And every time you say no to the dark, you say yes to your true form. You're not just resisting evil, you're training your essence to shine. So stop negotiating. Start standing. Later, we'll talk about deployment. What happens after boot camp? Until then, hold the line, train in clarity, and walk in undivided light. This is Metaphysical Boot Camp. Now for Protocol 9, Readiness for Eternal Assignment. The mission doesn't start after death. It starts after readiness. You've been training your mind, strengthening your essence, letting go of your comforts and illusions. Most wait for the moment when God will call them, but the awakened prepare as if it's already happened. The soul doesn't ask for permission. It moves when the mission is clear. Objective. Be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually ready to be sent at any moment. Exercise. Imagine being called into the next life tonight. What attachments scream? What fears paralyze? What must be left behind? This isn't fear-mongering. It's soul deployment. Imagine it's tonight. You're called. No warnings, no applause, only this question echoing through eternity. Were you ready? Ask, what do I still cling to as if it's eternal? Would I hesitate if God whispered, it's time? Who do I fear disappointing more than my Creator? If I let go of my whole life, would I still be me? Be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Matthew 24:44. Write your spiritual go-bag list. What would you carry into eternity? List what you're ready to leave behind. Burn or bury that list. Reflect, am I living like someone who's been sent? Read Matthew 24. This was not a sermon. It was a summons. You're trained. You're awake. The gate is opening. Prepare for the call. Today, we're going to do a two-sided list of the 20 biblical examples. This two-sided list will see the contrast between spiritual compromise and spiritual courage. Some figures in Scripture negotiated with darkness and paid the price. Others stood their ground or cut ties and gained freedom, clarity, or victory. Bible examples of those who negotiated with dark and paid for it. These individuals or groups who tried to reason with evil, compromise with sin, or tolerate corruption. The result was always loss of peace, power, destiny, or even life. Eve talks with the serpent, Genesis 3:1-6. She entertains Satan's questions instead of rejecting them. The fall of humanity begins with a conversation. Lot's compromise with Sodom, Genesis 13:19. Lot to live near and eventually inside Sodom. His family suffers spiritually and physically. Samson and Delilah, Judges 16. Samson flirts with a woman aligned with the enemies. She ends up blind, imprisoned, and betrayed. King Saul spares King Agag, 1 Samuel 15. Saul disobeys God's command by partially obeying, negotiating with the enemy. He loses the throne. Solomon marries foreign wives and builds their temple, 1 Kings 11. In an attempt to please everyone, he compromises truth. His kingdom fractures after his death. Achan hides forbidden treasure, Joshua 7. One man's secret compromise with cursed treasure causes Israel to lose a battle and brings death to his family. The Israelites demand a king, like other nations, 1 Samuel 8. They negotiate their identity for status. God warns them, and their kingship begins in dysfunction. Pilate tries to please the crowd, Matthew 27:24. He knows Jesus is innocent, but compromises truth to keep political peace. He literally washes his hands, but not his soul. Judas negotiates with the religious leaders, Matthew 26:14-16. For 30 pieces of silver, he bargains with dark. His life ends in regret and suicide. King Ahab marries Jezebel, 1 Kings 16:31-33. He joins with a woman devoted to idol worship. She leads Israel into demonic bondage and violence. Ananias and Sapphira lie to appear generous, Acts 5:1-11. They negotiate with image over integrity. Struck dead for deceiving the Holy Spirit. King Herod hears John the Baptist gladly, but does nothing. Mark 6:20. Fascinated, but unchanged, eventually caves to peer pressure and kills a prophet. Esau sells his birthright for a meal, Genesis 25:29-34. A moment of hunger leads to permanent spiritual loss. The Israelites make a golden calf, Exodus 32. While waiting on God, they negotiate their patience and birth an idol. The Galatians add legalism to grace, Galatians 1:6-9. Paul rebukes them for allowing a distorted gospel. Even if an angel preaches it, reject it. King Jehoshaphat joins with Ahab in battle, 2 Chronicles 18. He ignores prophetic warnings and nearly dies for joining forces with a corrupt king. Peter denies Jesus to stay safe, Luke 22:54-62. He negotiates his faith out of fear, later restored, but the regret is palpable. Simon the sorcerer wants to buy God's power, Acts 8:18-23. He tries to blend sorcery with the gospel. It is rebuked sharply by Peter. The Israelites fail to drive out all the Canaanites, Judges 1-2. Instead of full obedience, they tolerate enemies. It leads to generations of spiritual decay. The Laodicean church's lukewarm compromise, Revelations 3:14-17. They try to live in both worlds. Jesus says, I will spit you out. Now the other 20 Bible examples of those who refused to negotiate with darkness and triumph are the spiritual warriors, those who chose truth over comfort, holiness over popularity, and obedience over appeasement. Their strength came not from what they tolerated, but what they walked away from. Jesus rebuked Satan in the wilderness, Matthew 4, 1 through 11. He doesn't argue, he quotes the truth. No debate, no deal. Joseph flees Potiphar's wife, Genesis 39, 6 through 12. He doesn't entertain the temptation, he runs. His purity leads to prison, but also to power. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow, Daniel 3. They don't worship the idol, even if it costs them their lives. God meets them in the fire. Daniel prays despite the king's decree, Daniel 6. No hiding, no compromise. His loyalty lands him in the lion's den, where God shuts mouths. Moses confronts Pharaoh without fear, Exodus 5 through 12. He delivers God's demand without softening. Let my people go. No edit. Jesus flips the tables in the temple, John 2, 13 through 17. He doesn't negotiate with corruption. Drives it out. Zeal, not diplomacy. Paul rebukes Elmias the sorcerer, Acts 13, 8 through 11. Direct confrontation. You are full of deceit. The hand of the Lord is against you. Peter and John, we must obey God rather than men, Acts 5:29. Forbidden to preach, they do it anyway. Obedience over orders. Noah builds the ark despite culture's mockery, Genesis 6 through 9. He doesn't argue with skeptics. He obeys and survives. Elijah confronts the prophets of Baal, 1 Kings 18. Fire falls when he refuses to mix worship. One altar, one God. John the Baptist calls out Herod's sin, Mark 6, 17 through 20. It cost him his head, but not his soul. Stephen speaks truth before being stoned, Acts 7. He doesn't shrink. His final words echo heaven. Nehemiah refuses to come down from the wall, Nehemiah 6, 1 through 4. He says, I am doing a great work and cannot come down. Refuses distraction and sabotage. Jesus refuses to answer Pilate's manipulative questions, John 19:9. Silence is strength when words would compromise truth. The Apostle Paul refuses to circumcise Titus, Galatians 2, 3 through 5. Refuses to give in for even a moment to legalistic pressure. Deborah leads without apology, Judges 4 through 5. Doesn't step back or water down the call of God, even in a patriarchal culture. Peter rebukes Ananias and Sapphira, Acts 5, 3 through 10. No tolerance for spiritual fakery. Confronts their lie with deadly clarity. The woman in the alabaster jar pushes past judgment, Luke 7, 36 through 50. Refuses to be silenced by religious scorn, worships boldly. Jesus tells the devil, away from me, Satan, Matthew 4:10. Clear dismissal, no lingering, no hesitation. Revelation's overcomers did not love their lives until death, Revelation 12:11. They overcame not by negotiation, but by blood, word, and death-defying loyalty. Darkness thrives in compromise. It dies in clarity. Refusal isn't rejection, it's redirection to the light. In the kingdom, some battles are won not by fighting, but by refusing to sit at the wrong table. As we close today's training, let this be clear. Darkness will never negotiate. It waits for the moment you lower your guard. Every compromise, no matter how small, opens the door to its influence. But the awakened soul, it draws clear lines. It resists with ruthless clarity. You're not called to coexist with shadows, to soften your convictions or bargain with evil. Compromise kills formation. And make no mistake, every small concession, whether in your thoughts, habits, relationships, or words, compounds until your soul is shaped by darkness, not light. But here's the truth. The light always wins when it's undivided. It doesn't flirt with the shadows. It casts them off. So your responsibility, your mission, is to draw your line in the sand and refuse to cross it. Every no to darkness is a victory for your true form. Today we've learned the importance of clarity, no compromise. You've been trained in precision, in the ability to spot the shadows and reject them without hesitation. But now we shift focus. The real question is not if you will resist evil, but how ready are you for deployment? Protocol 9 is about being spiritually, emotionally, and mentally ready at any given moment to step into the mission. It's not just about preparing for death. It's about preparing for the life you were created to live today. The soul doesn't wait for permission. It moves when the mission is clear. Readiness doesn't start after death. It starts now. So, what do you need to let go of? What attachments still scream for your attention? This is not just soul searching. It's soul preparation. Because when the call comes, you'll either be ready or you'll find yourself paralyzed in hesitation. Here's your challenge. Take a moment today and write your spiritual go bag list. What will you carry into eternity? What do you need to leave behind? Burn or bury that list, symbolizing your willingness to surrender everything. And don't stop there. Think about the attachments you're holding onto, relationships, habits, fears. Would you hesitate if God whispered, "It's time"? Now's the time to let go of what's holding you back and prepare to be sent into your true purpose. Next time, we'll discuss deployment, how to step into your mission fully equipped, without hesitation. Until then, remember, hold your ground, train in clarity, walk in undivided light. This is Metaphysical Boot Camp. I'm Merrill, and this is Battleground. Thank you for joining me today. For those of you that are ready for another Bible chapter, stay tuned. Joseph in Potiphar's house. Now Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian official of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Israelites, who had brought him down there. And Yahweh was with Joseph, so he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now his master saw that Yahweh was with him, and how Yahweh caused all that he did to succeed in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended on him, and he appointed him overseer over his house, and all that he owned he gave in his hand. Now it happened that from the time he was appointed him overseer in his house, and over all that he owned, Yahweh blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. Thus the blessing of Yahweh was upon all that he owned, in the house and in the field. So he left everything he owned in Joseph's hand. And with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now Joseph was beautiful in form and beautiful in appearance. It happened after these events that his master's wife set her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has given all that he owns into my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" So it happened that as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. Now it happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the household was there inside. Then she seized him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. Now it happened when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, that she called to the men of her household and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew to us to laugh at us. He came into me to lie with me, and I screamed. Now it happened that when he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled and went outside. And she placed his garment beside her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with these words, saying, 'The Hebrew slave, whom you brought to us, came in to me to laugh at me, and as I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled outside.' Now it happened that when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, 'This is what your slave did to me,' his anger burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him into jail, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the jail. But Yahweh was with Joseph, and extended loving kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. So the chief jailer gave into the hand of Joseph all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's hand because Yahweh was with him, and whatever he did, Yahweh made to succeed. Lessons from Genesis 39. Joseph's story continues in Genesis 39, not with triumph, but with another test. Sold into slavery, he ends up in Egypt, serving in the house of Potiphar, a high-ranking official. Despite the betrayal and loss he suffered, Joseph doesn't wallow in bitterness. Instead, he chooses excellence. He works diligently, earns trust, and rises to a position of leadership in Potiphar's household. But then comes another trial. Potiphar's wife notices him. Day after day, she tries to seduce him, but Joseph refuses, not just because of loyalty to Potiphar, but because, as he puts it, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" When he finally flees her advances, she retaliates. She falsely accuses him of assault, and Joseph is thrown into prison. But again, Joseph doesn't spiral. Even in confinement, he gains the trust of the prison warden and is put in charge. Whether in privilege or in prison, Joseph's integrity remains unshaken. So what concepts can we learn from this chapter? 1. Integrity is who you are when no one is watching. Joseph could have given in, especially when no one would have known. But he lived by a higher standard. Integrity is internal. It's about who you choose to be, even when the pressure is on, and escape looks easy. 2. Character matters more than circumstance. Joseph didn't let his suffering justify compromise, whether promoted or imprisoned. This shows the real character isn't dependent on environment. It's rooted in conviction. 3. Success can attract opposition. The more Joseph thrived, the more resistance he faced. This is a sobering truth. Doing right doesn't always lead to applause. Sometimes it leads to more hardship, but it's still worth doing. 4. God's presence is often silent but steady. Twice in this chapter, we're told the Lord was with Joseph. He wasn't rescued immediately, but he wasn't abandoned. Divine presence doesn't always mean instant escape. Sometimes it means strength to endure. Now, how can we turn this into problem-solving techniques for our lives? Cultivate internal standards. Define your values clearly. Know in advance what lines you won't cross. When temptation comes, your decisions will be already made. Focus on what you can control. Joseph couldn't change his status as a slave or prisoner, but he could control his attitude, his work ethic, and his faithfulness. Invest your energy into what's in your hands, not what's out of reach. Practice consistent excellence. Whether you're in a role of influence or obscurity, show up with the same commitment and effort. Excellence in small things builds trust and opens bigger doors, eventually. Be prepared for unfairness without giving up. Sometimes the right choice leads to short-term pain. Don't confuse injustice with failure. Stay steady. You may be in a prison season now, but it could be preparation for a palace. Joseph teaches us that leadership isn't forged in comfort. It's shaped in hidden places. It's in resisting shortcuts, staying faithful under pressure, and believing that integrity always has a return, even when it looks like a loss. In a world full of compromise, Genesis 39 calls us to stand firm, live clean, and trust that our story isn't over when it gets hard. It's just getting refined. I'm Merrill, and this is Battleground. Thank you for staying until the end. Click here to start with the first episode, and here for the next episode. Goodbye.